We're talking a lot about how we're focusing on the customer centricity and making sure that your customers are getting a great experience, but there's a real operational opportunity in applying this technology and digital assistance to operations. So for the purpose of this particular demonstration, there's so many different opportunities out there. We're going to be focusing around engineering. So it's a little bit more of a complex area, but I'm hoping that you guys get as excited about it as I do. Just to frame things up, we're just going to watch a little quick video around how interconnected systems are helping things as simple as elevators.
It's a signal sent from a sensor in an elevator. Another signal from another sensor, sent every other second. It's not just a signal. It's the beginning of a new era, of elevators becoming intelligent. An elevator used to be a silent box on a rope, and now it communicates, and we can listen and uncover things we've never known before. Make intelligent decisions. Know what matters from millions of different signals and give meaning.
Landed 11 millimeters high.
Just once too often. I'm alerted technician.
For us, it means that we can predict and act, fix before breakage, tailor the perfect maintenance to an individual elevator. For you, it means improved safety, full transparency, and ease of mind, because if something would happen, we'd already know. Intelligent services for elevators and escalators are here.
How does that feel? The idea that an elevator is now talking to an automated digital assistant, automatically sending out work order requests for a service technician to engage with a particular problem. You think 11 millimeters is that much for someone who's got bad legs? That could be a real issue. The idea is that it's helping to improve safety for that kind of situation. What I want to talk about today is we're focusing around knowledge transfer, and part of that is about seeing your users as customers as well. Asking the same kind of questions. Do they have access to the information that they need? Is it available in a way that's useful? And does it take into consideration the type of situations they're going to be in when they need to access that information? And how are we extracting the knowledge from the intelligent people who have been around for a long time and who know the equipment, and then transferring it to the next generation? Customer centricity built on customer obsessive organizations is the first core element of the digital transformation canvas. And the second is leveraging emerging technologies. What many organizations are focused on is the customer side, and now the conversation I want to bring to an operational side, because that's where personally I'm interested in. So the question is, for an engineer, what's important for them? What are they doing in their day-to-day lives? They're scheduling maintenance. They're preparing for the job. They're finding where the job is and what kind of safety precautions that they need to take into consideration. They're wanting to diagnose a problem. They're wanting to coach someone else. They need remote assistance, and they're logging information and following up. These are all really complex tasks which require a lot of education. Now, when we start talking about what does digital humans and digital assistants have as far as helping that conversation flow, there's a real cool example from a company called Woodside who did something with IBM.
I know you, friend. I know every meter, every gap, every specification. I know every metric unit of pressure imposed on your 119,000 tonne frame and how it will react to the extreme conditions here on the remote northwest shelf. I know what a team of engineers in Norway reported on you and what a retired project manager documented on you a decade ago. I know fuel mixtures and flow rates, hard data and soft data. I know all this because we're designing a cognitive system with IBM Watson that consumes and learns everything written or reported about you from millions of files, decision logs, and technical evaluations spread across our company. We teach Watson to think like an engineer. Watson teaches us to think like 1,000 engineers from 1,000 different sources. I know temperatures and pressure gradients, anomalies and patterns. When you succeed, I will know why. I will know how. With Watson, we're asking more questions because we have more answers. We're making smarter decisions because we learn more every time we make one. And I know we're just getting started.
How cool is that? The idea that there is a way to get access to a massive plethora of information and make it available to an individual. What they're talking about here is, basically the tagline that I like the most is that we teach Watson to think like an engineer, and then Watson teaches us to think like 1,000 engineers with 1,000 different sources. The IBM Equipment Maintenance Advisor is a tool which collates and collects a huge amount of information, not just from someone giving it training modules, but it can go and use its natural language processing to read through BIM models, to read through pamphlets, manuals, all of the data that's come from the history of working on a particular asset or a particular task. And it provides it in a way which is contextually relevant to the person who wants to ask a question. So the operations personnel and engineers, they're working with really complex pieces of equipment, which is with a huge number of interdependencies, which correlate to a very specific way of doing something. Now, what does EMA provide? You know, EMA, that's the way that everyone does things, Siri, Google, all that fun stuff. So it provides access to historic information and makes it pertinent for a particular task. It has the ability to ask, you have the ability to ask a natural language question. It really is a digital assistant which has got the ability to provide you the correct level of information for the particular task that you're going through. It can help you diagnose failures based on not just the information that you're seeing, but information which is coming from a sensor down the line. It's coming from history, it's coming from everywhere, and it's really creating this digital assistant which has got the same level of knowledge as a senior engineer who's been working on the product or the piece of equipment for the last 15 years. The idea is that these assistants are prepared to augment an individual's intelligence. The idea is that when we're talking about how does knowledge transfer actually happen for things as complex as engineering, the question is, what does knowledge transfer look like at the moment? For an engineer, you have your engineering degree, you go through, then you get on site, and then you've got your internship. Internship's like 12 months. Then you have on-site training, you go through all of this kind of stuff, and then you're still babysat by a senior engineer. The idea of using a digital assistant like Emma means that you can ask a question wherever you are. You get access to the ability to make the best decision, to execute the best process the first time, and to make sure that you're doing things the right way as opposed to doing things the wrong way. It's all the clever stuff that you want to discuss. Something which is interesting is how people are currently accessing knowledge. 3 in 5 consumers are using voice assistants on smartphones at least monthly. I asked the question at the beginning, are we making sure that the information for our users is being given to them in a way which is relevant to them? If you take the situation of an engineer, an electrical engineer, he's kitted up, so he can't use a tablet. He's got his head down an access shaft and he's looking at a particular line and he says, "Hey Emma, I can see a lot of corrosion happening down here. What's the materials that this wire is made out of? And when was it last serviced? When was the last inspection for water penetration?" Getting access to that information, you would historically use a senior engineer to provide you that additional layer. Or you'd go out, you'd take off your gloves, you'd open your iPad and you'd scroll. Or if you're even more old school, you'd go to the manual that you brought out with you, flip through the pages and see what's actually happened. And then you can ask a pertinent question. This is the thing which I think is most important about virtual assistants, is your ability to ask a question and you will get relevant data, relevant information, and relevant knowledge. With Google, you can ask a question and you say, "Hey Google, what's this?" And it'll surface a bunch of web pages. Imagine if Google went through all those web pages, understood what you were trying to achieve, collated the information, and then presented it in a way which was tangibly applicable to the task that you were trying to achieve. That's what virtual assistants are providing engineers now. From a knowledge transfer perspective, you are getting all the information from not just one senior engineer, but every single senior engineer in your company. You're getting information from all of the IoT sensors, all of the history from everywhere. You've got global corporations, you've got huge amounts of source data which can be surfaced and made applicable to an individual, especially if they're a junior. What do people like about voice assistants? It's that it's hands-free. It's convenient for them to engage with the material without actually, getting their hands dirty if they're doing a particular task. And that's super relevant for people like engineers and maintenance advisors. We're talking about going through this digital assistant process and some of the considerations that you need to sort of understand. Firstly, are your people ready? It really is a question that you need to ask. Have you gone through the process of understanding the, Max uses the term digital, what is it, the readiness assessment? Maturity. Yep, the digital maturity within a company, whether or not they're ready to actually adopt and accept these are the changes that are going through. Understanding your user. Giving a user who is spending their time down in a dark area access to a tablet with as pretty as they are, a virtual face, is possibly not going to be the most appropriate. So making sure that you're understanding what your user is going to be doing on a day-to-day basis is so important, just like you would for your customers. You need to bring your people along for the journey. People are going to buy into something that they've been part of building, or something that they've been part of the conversation for. The last thing is make it iterative. Well, not the last thing, there's one more. Make it iterative. We're talking about AI, not AGI, artificial intelligence versus artificial general intelligence. The difference is that AI needs to be taught. There are going to be iterations. There is going to be a learning curve for this particular piece of equipment. And the idea is that you need to make sure that you're providing this additional information in segments, this additional capability in iterative perspectives. Is your data ready to talk? People have got a huge amount of source data, especially for engineering. You've got different systems, you've got different history. Something that you need to be considerate of is, are they in a position where they're prepared to talk, where they're talking the same language? We have a concept called Asset 360, which is the idea where what is an asset for one particular system might not necessarily match up, so you need to do a piece of work to integrate those systems and make sure that they're talking together. So that way when people ask the questions, they're getting the right level of information. And the last mile and the hardest is you need to be prepared to train your assistants. The assistant out of the box is very cool. It's very intelligent and it's got the ability to read catalogs and read manuals. But what it doesn't have is it doesn't have the uniqueness of your environment. There are specific nuances to the way that you do your job. You need to train it and work with it and help it, educate it. So that way once, like they did at Woodside, they taught it to think like an engineer. Now it thinks like 1,000 engineers. It's a really cool and repeatable process that can continue to expand and continue to be enhanced. After this, we've got a workshop which Craig is running, which is going to be focusing around, okay, well, how do you identify use cases to leverage things as cool as digital assistants for operational excellence? One of the concepts that sort of come up is training. You know, if you've got 30 trained trainers and you've got 3,300 people to train, what are you going to do? How can digital assistants help to bridge that gap and provide that knowledge transfer so that way your people are ready to work and you're maximizing the return from your people?